Hello. Letting folks get settled in. Good afternoon. First day. This is our first day of Civics 101. Super excited to share this space with you all. Give you a second to just get in, get comfortable, grab your tea, vibe into a little bit of music. You know, Instagram will shut you down immediately if you play any music that has been previously published. So you guys are getting a little bit of taste of some newer music that I have yet to release. Hope you enjoy it. It's called Love is Love. And in these times, we must share as much love as possible. We're chilling here waiting for Tonya to jump on so we can start talking about these civics, y'all. The most important thing we could do this year, 2020, is to for sure, absolute sure, vote. So today we will be talking about all of that. We'll be getting into the weeds of how we can best serve our community and ourselves through our work. So I'm excited to share this space with you all. Good afternoon, Carrie. How you doing? Good morning, Hinton. Hello, hello. Just waiting for Tonya to jump in here as we get loose. Hope everybody's got something yummy to sip on. I've got this really great tea made of, my God, I've got everything in here. Good afternoon, Sarah. How y'all doing? Good day, Tonya. You voted today, Carrie. Yes, girl, yes. Hello, hello.
Hello.
How are you doing, darling?
Good. Sorry, I was a little confused about the instructions. So sorry, I'm a tad tardy, but I'm here.
It's all good. But you're on your handle. You're not on Haven, yeah?
Yeah, I tried to do it via Haven and wasn't able to get on to you live, but then I got all these invites to my personal account, so I switched.
Got it. Okay. Well,
yeah, sorry.
No worries. Let's give folks a couple more seconds to just jump in and vibe. I see Ryan Nicole is on here. That's right, Carrie. Post your picture of you voting. I've been sitting outside of a coffee shop in LA cheering people on as they drop off their ballots all week last week. How have you been doing, Miss Tonya?
Hanging in there. I'm doing local campaign work, and it's crazy.
I bet.
So I'm just going to have lots of stuff to talk about after the campaign, but until then it's going well. I'm having fun navigating this process.
Well, I just want to say publicly with everyone who's listening now and who will listen again, thank you for what you do for our community. You consistently are willing to show up and synthesize information that for all manner of reasons, intentional and unintentional, our government makes it hard for us to understand some of this stuff. So Thank you for all that you do and how much energy you give. And you are always so willing. I can't tell you guys how many times I've called Tonya and been like, girl, can you explain to me what the hell this is supposed to mean? What's the difference between a proposition and a
measure again? Right.
Thank you. So today is our first day of Civics 101 2020. myself, Jennifer Johns, and my project, the F.U.N Manifesto, have partnered with my dear sister, Miss Ryan Nicole, and the Haven Project. And our intention is to demystify the voting process, to demystify all of the confusion of this time. Our intention is really just to make it as simple as it possibly can be. And any questions that we don't answer, we'll say this a bazillion more times, please, please, please send messages. Send a DM to Haven, send a DM to myself, and as best as I can answer the question, I will. If not, I'm more than likely going to just call Tonya. But, but thank you in advance for making this experience better, all of you voters. So let's just jump right on in. This year, things are a wee bit different, eh? We got some other stuff going on around voting, yes?
Yeah, we have like COVID, we have social justice, political unrest, just all of that is happening at the same time.
Right.
And so it adds an extra layer of specialness to this election, not to mention who's running, making that even more special and making things more complicated. So yeah, this year is one for the books for many reasons.
But we got this, Tonya. We can do it, and we're going to be triumphant. So what is different this year? I know that we've got a couple propositions on the ballot, and just a quick overview, like what is different about this year?
So we have actually 12 propositions on the ballot this year, and we're not going to go over all of them. You're not going to go over all of them, but half of them are, a good portion of them are dealing with stuff that's already been passed and asking for upgrades. Some is changing drastically, making a great change to our Constitution, which we will be talking about today. And so what's different is that because of COVID-19 and the need to protect residents as they're voting, keeping them healthy, there's been a change in how we're voting this year. And so in the legislature earlier this year made it so that, and the governor made it so that it's a requirement that all polling places have enough space for social distancing. So you have to be able to accommodate 2,500 people. They have to be parking for 40, not 2,500 people. It has to have 2,500 square feet. Sorry.
I was about to be like, good God.
Yeah, you don't want 2,500 people voting in one place.
One
but
time.
It has to have square distance of 2,500 feet.
Okay.
And you have to have parking. And so that means that it can't just be in grandma's garage. You have to have larger spaces. And so it took some time, but each county had to identify those spaces. Also, they're trying to make available more drop boxes, which there really wasn't a lot in Oakland. So the only drop boxes were, there's maybe 3 or 4. And so now they've increased it to maybe 20 or so. So that's different. And also what's different is they're allowing people to vote by mail.
Yeah.
And so everyone should have gotten their vote by mail ballot this year. The deadline was to be sent out by October 5th. I think I got mine in the middle of the week last week. And so you are actually able to vote starting from October 5th up to November 3rd. Actually, maybe even past November 3rd, but we're all targeting November 3rd, right? Yeah. So from now until November 3rd at 8 p.m., you can drop it off at a voting location. You can send it through the mail, and we're recommending that you do it by October 20th if you want to make sure it gets to the voter registers by November 3rd. So if you're doing it by mail, put it in the mailbox by October 20th. Or you can drop it off yourself and vote early on November 3rd until 8 p.m. So there's different options. And so, it makes things different this year.
Yeah, and I think something that we had talked about in 2018 was kind of helping to popularize this idea that we're not working towards a voting day, but more that we're in a voting season.
Right.
That voting season is a month long, y'all.
Yes.
And that you have a lot of time where you get to express yourself. And, you know, anybody who knows me well knows that I think just about everything we do is a spiritual act. But in particular, voting, I know that voting is a practice of standing up for your values. It's about being counted for what you believe in, and that it really must be taken as seriously as, I don't know, brushing your teeth. I mean, our civic hygiene, if you will, is just as important, right? And it ensures that we're able to function in this world better. And for people who look like us, for women, for people of color, it's so easy to say, my vote doesn't matter, who I am doesn't matter, that people don't see me. And that's exactly what the intention is from your opposition, is this belief that you're not powerful enough, that you're not important enough, that you're not dynamic enough. And that's absolutely the shit of bulls. So anyways, we're going to continue to move forward and talk about these here propositions. So you gave us some dates that we need to remember before we keep moving. And so let's just jump into Proposition 17.
So, you know, just to piggyback of what you just said, this is about making sure that we're seen and everyone has the right to be seen. And so that's what makes Proposition 17 and 18 so important. And so Proposition 17 is basically, if you vote yes, it would allow those who are on parole, on state parole, the right to vote. And then given the right to vote, that means they will also be able to run for office. So because it is state law that if you can register to vote, then you can run for office.
Oh, girl, wait. Wait. Say that again.
It is state law. If you are eligible to register to vote, you are eligible to run for office. Just like it's like, you know, a lot of people think that, oh, you have to be all this big person to run for president. All you have to be is 35.
Ask Kanye West.
Yeah, and just, you know, not have been, you know, convicted of a serious crime. And then in this bill, you just, if you're a state prisoner and you have been released and you're on parole, and parole usually lasts like for around 3 years, and you want to vote, then you'll have, if people vote yes for this on Proposition 17, then they will have the right to vote and they will have the right to run for office too.
So Tonya, I have obvious feelings about people having access to the right to vote. Can you tell me why this particular proposition is important, in particular for Black and Brown communities?
Yeah. So currently, those who have been in the jail system, in the county jail system, are able to vote, even if you are currently in county jail and when you're on parole.
Yes, God.
Right. But when you're in state system, usually you've done more serious crimes. You may have done more violent crimes, like, you know, rape.
Or you've been convicted of more violent crimes.
You've been convicted of more violent crimes. Yes, that's important. There's distinction. And so generally beforehand, they kind of wanted to restrict you from having to be able to participate in the state. But the reason why it's so important is because what California has been trying to do is to decriminalize, you know, the system. We're trying to release people earlier. We're trying to have less, you know, punitive sentences. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to rehabilitate and not keep people, you know, down. And so part of that rehabilitation is giving people a sense of ownership of what's happening in the government system. And the only way you can really have that kind of ownership is if you're participating, you're allowed to vote, right? Yeah. So that's what this trend is happening, is that, you know, if we really believe that we are rehabilitating people, then we need to give them the full, you know, rights to citizenship, and that includes voting.
That must include voting.
Yes. And so why that is important to Black and Brown communities, because it's Black and Brown communities that have been targeted for criminalization. And so when you're talking about those who are in the state system, it's mainly people that look like us, you know? And so that means what it is it's a form of voter repression when you're saying that if you've been involved in the criminal justice system, you can't vote. and that's further, you know, demarginalizing and marginalizing us. And so what this, so this proposition really kind of opens the door for more communities to have that right.
That's powerful. And your vote matters. I know that so many people from my community, I'm from East Oakland, and so many folks that I know don't concern themselves with voting because they had family members that were convicted of crimes and couldn't vote. And so it wasn't a part of their family culture growing up, you know. And so looking at this, you know, though, again, I cannot tell you what direction to vote here, just looking at this proposition and thinking about the impacts that we have experienced as a community, having whole populations ineligible standing up for what they value. This is a pretty powerful piece. Okay, so moving right along, do you have anything else to tell me about Proposition 17? And we will be taking questions at the end.
I would just say, parole by definition isn't supposed to be a punishment. So some of the opposition to this is that, so we're going to get, violent criminals the right to vote, and they're going to have the right to run for office. So again, I just want to harken back to that idea of rehabilitation and about this, what we know is to be a fact, and what you had alluded to earlier was that sometimes our communities are, sentenced and found guilty, even though they may not have been.
That's the Central Park Five.
Right, Central Park Five. And so when we have this racist system, what if someone has just been caught up, really is not quote unquote guilty, and yet you're still further marginalizing them? What if they want to do something to change that? What if they want to run for office to change the law? This is what would allow for that to happen. So remember that we got to remember that, we are in general criminalized more, and we need to have the opportunity to be able to make that change. And that's what this proposition will do.
Absolutely. And, once you've gone to prison and you have paid your debt to society, that should be it.
That should be it.
And if nothing else, you might know a whole lot more about the justice system, and your vote comes from a more educated place than some of us. So that's pretty powerful. Okay, so moving right along to Proposition 18. Tell me about this one. I'm reading on Wikipedia, and it says Proposition 18 is a ballot measure that will appear in the 2020 elections for November 20th. If passed, it would allow 17-year-olds to vote in primary and special elections if they will turn 18 by the subsequent election. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so essentially it's what you said. So we hear this narrative that, the youth, aren't voting as much as, adults, right? And I think there is a data at calmatters.org. It says only 22% of 18 to 34-year-olds are likely to vote in California this election. And so what they want to do is they kind of want to broaden it and say, well, maybe if they were eligible to vote at 17 during the primaries, they get the right to vote in the primaries. And as long as they turn 18 by the time the general election happens, then they can vote in the general election too. So I kind of want to give a little bit of background about this, right? So the impetus now is because we're seeing youth really galvanize about what's happening in society lately, right? They're speaking up about the environment. They're speaking up about racial justice. They are involved, right? They're sometimes knocking on doors. They're protesting. They're doing all kinds of stuff, right? But yet they don't get a final say because they can't go to the ballot and they can't vote. And so that kind of seems like off, right? If they have the ability, especially when you're thinking about the environment, there was a huge movement, youth-led movement around the environment. There's also a huge youth-led movement around gun violence in schools, right? These are young people that really mobilized and tried to get people to pass gun laws. but they couldn't vote on it. So that just seems wrong. That seems off. And then just a little bit of a fun fact. 18-year-olds have only been allowed to vote for the past 50 years. So it was in 1971.
That's right. Yes, that's right. I did learn that in that one civics class the last time I learned about civics.
Yeah, so it was 1971 that the 26th Amendment was ratified. And the reason why that was passed was because the message was, well, we have kids that are being drafted, that are going into the army. They can fight in wars, but they can't vote. How is that right?
Do we know what the age was before?
21. So at the time, they were like, okay, this makes sense, because if we're able to draft 18-year-olds to go to war and fight for this country, then they should be allowed the right to vote, right? But we don't have that kind of same impetus now, because we're saying 17, 17s aren't necessarily drafted to go to war. And the other argument in opposition that people in opposition are saying, they're like, 17-year-olds, they're not responsible. They're not paying taxes. They're not, all this stuff. But even though that in itself isn't quite true, because there's plenty of youth that are working, especially in our community, where a lot of us are low income. We've had, I started working at 14.
Yep.
And even though, we're not filling out tax forms at April 15th, we're still paying it, because they'll definitely take it out of our checks, right?
It's on it, Magdime.
So they're paying taxes. And so even that, they're old enough to be able to discern that there's social injustice in the world, that the environment, decisions that adults are making on their behalf is being impacted the environment. They have to live in the world that we're voting on. And yet they don't get to have a say. So that's hard. That's a hard argument. It's hard to look young people in the face, right, and say, you know what? I know you're concerned about the environment, but I don't care. I'm going to vote how I want to vote. And I think energy is important right now. And the oil is important right now. Or whatever, So, but, once you grow up next year,
right,
you can vote. You
too can join this annoying argument.
Right.
Yeah. I think I believe that you should be registered to vote at the point that you get your driver's license. At the point that you got to sign anything that says I'm responsible for anything, then you should be registered to vote. I don't think I think that being registered to vote isn't something that you should go and fill out.
Right.
It should just be like,
your drivers. And that's what's happening in California. Anyone that gets their license is automatically getting a register to vote information. So it should be able to happen as soon as you're able to get or a permit, which I think 17-year-olds are able to get. Yeah. Then you should be able to get the application to vote too, I think.
Absolutely. Well,
and I just want to add one minor thing for Oakland residents. Along with Proposition 18, we have a measure on our ballots asking us to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote for school board members.
Boom!
So if you are inclined to allow 17-year-olds to vote in the general election, I would think that, their voice is important for school board, because that's directly impacting them more than anything else. So please consider that as well.
Awesome. And while I have you, because I often am like, what's the difference between a proposition and a measure?
Okay. So propositions are states. State propositions, that's what they're called, what's going on in the state, and it ends up, changing the law in the state of California. The measures are what's happened locally. Okay. Let me see. And someone asked, what is the name of the measure? So
what's up, Coco?
It's measure QQ.
QQ. Kasum. Yeah, you got to love our community. They are right here on it. They're like, it's QQ, girl. I got this.
QQ. Yeah.
I love these conversations because it really is a proof of pooling information, conversation, you begin to see that there are so many of us that are asking these questions, and we're really in this together, and that this doesn't have to be confusing or mystifying or any of those things. It can be simple and all of that. So thank you again. So let me open it up for questions. Does anyone have any question on Proposition 17 or 18? You want another refresher course like me on the difference between a measure and a proposition? Well, we have Tonya on the line. That would be great. Feel free to fire away your questions. As I said before, if you are watching this later and you want some more clarification, feel free to DM me, also to DM the Haven Project. Tomorrow we'll figure it out, and we will be live from my Instagram as well as from the Haven Instagram. And make sure that you follow Haven. It's _1 Haven _. And Haven is really all about what it looks like for us to create a just and sustainable environment in Oakland. How can we show up and take care of one another, regardless of ethnicity, socioeconomic status? We know that we are here to grow a world where all of us can thrive together. So be sure to follow Haven and follow Tonya, because listen, Linda, this won't pull no punches. She got to be halfway behaved while talking to me.
I got to be halfway behaved up until the election, but man.
You got some things, you have some emotions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bless you. That's all I have. All I got for you today is, girl, thank you for putting yourself and your body and your mental space. I know it requires a whole lot of Brussels sprouts for you to function at this level. If anybody knows Tonya, you know how much she really, really loves a Brussels sprout.
And the odd thing about that, it's only been a year that I've liked Brussels sprouts, and it's just like become a whole thing.
That's
but I would, just to kind of add more to the conversation, if we want to go to 130, one of the things that you're going to hear, especially from those who are more conservative, is the fear of allowing youth, or even those who are incarcerated, really, to have that voice. Because what the tendency is that youth and those who have been in the prison system are more liberal. And so that changes the dynamic. It makes it even more harder for conservative views to be, expressed, I guess, at the electorate, in California in particular, because as we know, California tends blue. So if we even open it up more, what does that mean for the other party? But I think that's a generalization, because there's some things that youth are liberal about and some things that they're conservative about. And I would say the same thing, even if you're in the system. I wouldn't necessarily, believe that. And in California, all liberals aren't created the same either. There's a varying spectrum of what it means to be liberal, progressive, all of that. So, but I do think when you're looking at you're providing everyone the right to vote, I think that's what's important. So, who's funding No on QQ in Prop 17? I don't know about No on QQ, but on 17, there are no one on record for opposing these bills, but they're in support. So far, these bills there hasn't been a lot spent. So for 17, there's only been 900,000 spent so far. And that has been by major donors. Patty Quillen, who's a philanthropist, wife of Netflix co-founder.
And that's in support, correct?
In support.
Okay.
And there's a Susan Pritzker, who's also a philanthropist, and ACLU. They're in support, and they've spent in support, but there hasn't been a lot of funding in opposition. And then for 18, who is in support, California Association for Student Councils, Governor Gavin Newsom, Secretary of State Alex Padilla, California League of Conservation Voters, school boards associations. But who's against is Election Integrity Project California. I don't know who they are. So that's something to consider.
You know, it's also, I was just thinking about our environment. You were talking about young people voting, you're talking about formerly incarcerated people voting. And I'm thinking about our environment. I'm thinking about the fires, and I'm thinking about how long it took to get that initial fire in August. I can't remember, the complex something or other fire that I think is still burning under control. And it was out of control in large part because we've been using enslaved people to fight these fires. And so having a more robust group of people voting allows for more of what has happened since we've been on lockdown, where rules have changed and pressure has been mounted. And I would imagine that part of the reason why we're seeing this measure, or this proposition on the ballot is because of our push and our overstanding that all people deserve to vote. And so I just leave that with you all, lest I stand on one side or another to support anything. I just want to offer the idea that it is important that we all have access to vote. That I will never mince my words about. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, sister. I appreciate you. Tomorrow we will be here with Liz Sook. We will be in conversation about, what are we talking about tomorrow? We're talking about the split roll, Proposition 15. And then again on Wednesday, we will be back live and direct with my sister Tonya, getting loose, having good conversation. Again, any questions, please feel free to DM me. Please feel free to DM _1 Haven _ and follow Haven. Join the Haven. Be a part of creating the world we all deserve to live in, and get educated. And then, of course, follow my sister Tonya. Thank you, girl.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.